Okay, so get this. Ready for a deep dive into something truly unexpected.
Always up for the unexpected. What do we have?
Well, we're talking about Jiddu Krishnamurti.
The philosopher, the one often linked with, like, spirituality and all that.
Exactly. But here's the twist. We're going to explore how his ideas, those philosophical concepts, actually connect to, get this, quantum technology.
Whoa, hold on. That's a pretty wild leap, isn't it? From, like, meditation and consciousness to the world of qubits and quantum computers?
It seems that way, right? But there's this really insightful essay, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Philosophische Inspiration for Quantenphysik, by Jorgo Schneeppert, that actually makes a pretty compelling case for this connection.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Schneeppert, huh? So how does he bring these two seemingly totally different worlds together?
Well, Schneeppert argues that it's Krishnamurti's core approach to understanding the world, his constant questioning, his insistence on looking beyond the surface level of things that really resonates with the whole spirit of quantum physics.
I mean, I can kind of see that. Quantum physics is all about challenging those, everyday assumptions we have about how reality works. It forces us to rethink everything.
Exactly, and Schneeppert lays it all out. And that's what we're going to unpack for you in this deep dive. We'll look at Krishnamurti's background, his philosophy, then how those ideas actually found their way into quantum tech, some of the specific contributions Schneeppert attributes to him, the collaborations, even some of the pushback he got, and finally, his overall influence and legacy.
Sounds like a fascinating journey. So where do we begin?
Well, with any deep dive, you got to start with the foundation. Let's unpack Krishnamurti's philosophical background. Schneeppert gives a great overview in the essay.
All right, so Krishnamurti, what were his big ideas? What was he all about?
One of the first things that Schneeppert really emphasizes is Krishnamurti's total rejection of authority. Like any kind of traditional authority, whether it's religious dogma, cultural norms, societal pressures, you name it.
So basically, he was all about thinking for yourself, not blindly accepting what you're told.
Right. And Schneeppert uses this term, conditioning. Krishnamurti believed that we're all burdened by these ingrained beliefs and assumptions that shape how we see the world. He urged people to break free from this conditioning to achieve genuine understanding.
I see. So it's about this radical kind of freedom, freeing your mind from all the stuff that clouds your perception.
Exactly. And for Krishnamurti, as Schneeppert explains, learning wasn't about passively absorbing information. It was a dynamic process of questioning, scrutinizing your perceptions, constantly opening yourself up to new ways of seeing reality.
So it was less about acquiring knowledge and more about cultivating a certain mindset, a way of engaging with the world.
Absolutely. And this brings us to something that Schneeppert highlights as a core element of Krishnamurti's thought. Consciousness and perception.
Now we're getting to some really interesting territory. What was his take on consciousness?
Well, Krishnamurti didn't see consciousness as just this thing happening inside our heads. He saw it as fundamental to reality itself, a kind of connecting force between the individual self and the entire universe.
So not just thinking or feeling, but something more profound, something interwoven with the very fabric of existence.
Right. And Schneeppert emphasizes that this consciousness is in constant interplay with our perception, actively shaping our experience of reality. And this, right here, is where we start to see a potential connection to quantum mechanics, particularly the whole idea of the observer effect.
Yeah, the observer effect. That's one of those mind-blowing concepts that quantum physics throws at us. The idea that the act of observing something can actually influence what we observe.
Precisely. And this is where Krishnamurti's concept of the free mind comes in.
Okay, free mind. What did he mean by that?
Well, as Schneeppert explains, it's not simply about having freedom of thought. It's about the ability to think and act independently of all those external pressures and biases. It's about cultivating this unshakable inner freedom to see things clearly without distortion. And critical thinking was essential for that, always questioning assumptions and striving for genuine understanding.
That's interesting because if you think about what scientists were grappling with in quantum mechanics, all those uncertainties and probabilities, this kind of mindset would have been pretty crucial.
Absolutely. And this is where we see a clear parallel that Schneeppert points out. Both Krishnamurti's philosophy and quantum mechanics, in their own ways, challenged those long-held classical views of reality.
Yeah, they both sort of shook things up, forcing people to reconsider what they thought they knew about how the world works.
Exactly. And Schneeppert goes deeper into some specific examples, like decoherence and, of course, the observer effect.
Okay, for those who might need a refresher, can you break down what decoherence is?
Sure. So in quantum mechanics, you have these systems that can exist in multiple states at once, right? That's called superposition. But when a system interacts with its environment, it kind of loses this ability and collapses into a single definite state. That's decoherence.
And the observer effect, of course, is that famous idea that the act of observing, of measuring a quantum system, can actually cause this collapse.
Right. And Schneppe draws a fascinating connection here to Krishnamurti's emphasis on conscious observation. He points out that physicists like Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg were key in highlighting the observer's role in quantum physics.
So Krishnamurti's ideas, his philosophical framework, kind of aligned with what these physicists were discovering about the nature of reality at the quantum level.
Exactly. And Schneppe even takes it a step further, highlighting Krishnamurti's idea that the observer and the observed aren't separate entities, but deeply interconnected. He even talks about the density matrix, a mathematical representation used in quantum mechanics, and how certain terms, those reflecting this interconnectedness, diminish during decoherence.
So the observer isn't just passively watching, they're somehow participating in the reality they're observing.
Exactly. And then Schneppe moves on to the role of subjective reality, which is another area where Krishnamurti's philosophy intersects with quantum mechanics. The idea that reality isn't this fixed objective thing, but shaped by our perception.
Yeah, I mean, think about the double slit experiment. That classic example where the way we choose to observe those particles actually changes the outcome.
Right. And Schneppe connects this to the concept of the wave function in quantum mechanics, that mathematical description of a system before any measurement is made. He explains how the act of observation causes this wave function to collapse into a specific outcome.
So again, the observer is intricately involved in shaping the reality they're observing, just as Krishnamurti suggested. Okay, so we've laid out this philosophical groundwork. Now I'm really curious, how did Krishnamurti, with these ideas about consciousness and reality, actually enter the world of quantum technology?
It's a great question, and Schneppe walks us through it in his essay. He points out that the key link is Krishnamurti's central idea, that the human mind actively participates in shaping reality. This resonates with that observer principle we were just talking about.
Right, that connection is clear. But Schneppe also highlights Krishnamurti's perspective on science itself.
Oh, that's interesting. What was his stance on science?
Well, he didn't reject science. In fact, he saw it as a valuable tool for exploring reality. But he was also very aware of the limitations of a purely materialistic worldview.
So he was advocating for a more holistic approach, integrating both the scientific and the philosophical.
Exactly. And Schneppe explains how this belief in direct experience and observation fueled Krishnamurti's fascination with quantum physics, particularly those strange phenomena that challenged our conventional notions of space, time, and causality.
Like entanglement, where two particles become linked regardless of distance.
Precisely. Entanglement, non-locality, even superposition. These concepts really captivated Krishnamurti because they pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
And Schneppe then details Krishnamurti's interactions with some of the prominent figures in quantum physics, most notably David Bohm.
Bohm, the physicist who proposed the idea of an interconnected implicate order underlying reality.
Exactly. Schneppe describes how Bohm's holistic interpretation of quantum mechanics really resonated with Krishnamurti's own insights. They engaged in extensive dialogues, exploring the unity of consciousness and matter, the role of subjective experience, all these big questions.
So it was a genuine meeting of minds, two thinkers from different disciplines finding common ground in these profound areas of inquiry.
Absolutely. And Schneppe also mentions Krishnamurti's involvement in setting up interdisciplinary think tanks, bringing together physicists, philosophers, and others to explore these ideas further.
That's fantastic. He was actively fostering collaboration across those traditional academic boundaries.
Exactly. And it wasn't just theoretical discussions. Schneppe also talks about Krishnamurti's initial forays into scientific inquiry, his attempts to understand how consciousness might influence physical systems. He even grappled with the Schrödinger equation, trying to interpret it as a more holistic representation of reality.
Wow, he really dove in.
He did. And this led him to recognize the need for even broader interdisciplinary collaboration. Schneppe highlights Krishnamurti's involvement in launching projects that brought together scientists from various fields to explore the practical applications of quantum mechanics.
Things like quantum computing, secure communication, and quantum cryptography.
Exactly. Schneppat even gives the example of a research institute that united philosophers, physicists, and computer scientists all working together.
That's so forward-thinking, and Schneppat makes a crucial point about how Krishnamurti's unique perspective encouraged scientists to question those deep-seated assumptions about reality.
Right, by challenging those conventional beliefs about consciousness, causality, the very nature of existence, he indirectly helped to spark entirely new areas of research, like quantum biology and the exploration of consciousness in complex systems.
His influences rippling out across these various fields, and Schneppat even mentions his impact on the early development of algorithms that try to bridge the gap between quantum mechanics and neural networks for AI.
It's pretty remarkable. Okay, so now that we've explored his philosophical background and how he entered the world of science, let's get into the specifics. What were his actual contributions to quantum technology, according to Schneppat?
Well, Schneppat begins by discussing Krishnamurti's innovative approach to quantum information processing. He highlights how Krishnamurti saw information not just as data, but as a fundamental element of reality itself. And by integrating insights about consciousness into quantum information theory, he helped lay the groundwork for a whole new way of thinking about information that went beyond classical models.
So he was pushing the boundaries of how we even understand information.
Precisely. And Schneppat explains how this involved applying those core quantum concepts we talked about earlier, like entanglement and superposition, ultimately leading to the development of the qubit, which is the building block of quantum information.
Ah, the qubit. It's like the quantum equivalent of a bit in classical computing, right?
Exactly. But unlike a classical bit, which can be either a 0 or a 1, a qubit can exist in a superposition of both states simultaneously. This is where that mind-bending power of quantum computing comes from. And Schneppat dives into how this can be mathematically represented using linear combinations and what are called Ket notations.
That's getting a little technical, but I think the key takeaway is that Krishnamurti's insights about consciousness and reality actually have practical implications for how we understand and manipulate information at the quantum level.
Absolutely. And Schneppat then moves on to perhaps one of Krishnamurti's most radical proposals, integrating consciousness directly into quantum algorithms.
Now that sounds pretty far out. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, as Schneppat explains, Krishnamurti saw consciousness itself as a kind of quantum process, and he envisioned algorithms that could, in a sense, learn and evolve, adapting to changing environments by drawing upon those principles of self-organization that are enabled by quantum phenomena like superposition and decoherence.
So it's like these algorithms wouldn't be static. They would be dynamic, almost like they have a kind of consciousness themselves.
Right. It's a radically different way of thinking about computation. And Schneppat links these theoretical ideas to practical applications, particularly in quantum computing. He points out how Krishnamurti's perspectives contributed to the advancements that are now allowing quantum computers to tackle problems that are impossible for even the most powerful classical computers. He even mentions Shor's algorithm specifically, which has major implications for cryptography because it can efficiently factor large numbers.
So these abstract philosophical ideas are having tangible, real-world impacts.
Precisely. And Schneppat then dives into cryptography, highlighting Krishnamurti's early recognition of how quantum phenomena, particularly entanglement, could be used to create unbreakable security for communication.
This is where quantum key distribution, or QKD, comes in, right?
Exactly. QKD leverages the principles of quantum mechanics to ensure that any attempt to eavesdrop on a communication channel would immediately be detected.
So it's like having a built-in alarm system that goes off if someone tries to snoop.
Exactly. And Schneppat discusses Krishnamurti's significant role in envisioning and developing quantum communication networks, using entangled particles to transmit information securely over long distances.
That's mind-blowing. It's like something out of science fiction.
Right. And Schneppat specifically mentions Krishnamurti's pioneering work in the area of quantum teleportation. Now, it's important to note that this isn't about physically transporting objects, like in Star Trek.
Right, it's not about beaming people up.
No, but it's still incredible. Quantum teleportation involves transferring the exact quantum state of one particle to another, no matter how far apart they are. It's a crucial step in building those quantum networks of the future.
And Schneppat explains that the ultimate goal, as envisioned by Krishnamurti, was to establish a secure global communication system using a combination of QKD and entanglement, creating a level of security that's virtually unbreakable.
Precisely. And finally, Schneppat emphasizes that Krishnamurti didn't see quantum technology just as a set of tools. He viewed it as a philosophical instrument, something that could help us deepen our understanding of reality itself.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about the bigger questions it raises.
Exactly. And Schneppet brings up the observer effect again, but this time in the context of technological development as a whole. Krishnamurti argued that the process of developing technology isn't neutral. It's shaped by the intentions and perceptions of the people involved, which brings up important ethical and existential considerations.
Right. He was warning about the potential ethical pitfalls of these powerful technologies.
Precisely. Schneppet highlights how Krishnamurti stressed the immense responsibility of scientists to ensure that quantum technology is used for the benefit of humanity. This has had a real impact on discussions about ethical guidelines in this field.
So he wasn't just passively observing scientific progress, he was actively trying to guide it in an ethical direction. Okay, now let's move on into something else Schneppet emphasizes. Krishnamurti's role in fostering interdisciplinary collaboration.
Right, this was a big one for him. Schneppet really stresses how Krishnamurti was ahead of his time in recognizing the need to bring together different disciplines to fully understand quantum physics.
So breaking down those walls between, say, philosophy, physics, neuroscience, computer science, all these different fields.
Exactly. And he didn't just talk about it, he actively created spaces for these conversations. The dialogues he initiated, the intellectual centers he helped establish, all aimed at bridging those disciplinary divides. And his collaboration with David Bohm, which we talked about earlier, is a prime example of this interdisciplinary approach in action.
And Schneppet points out that it wasn't just established scientists who were influenced by Krishnamurti. His ideas inspired physicists grappling with consciousness, mathematicians exploring new theoretical models. Schneppet even mentions Hilbert spaces, which are used to describe quantum states, and even AI researchers trying to combine machine learning with quantum mechanics.
His influence really spread far and wide.
It did. And Schneppet then dives into these fascinating connections that Krishnamurti helped foster between quantum physics, neuroscience, and ethics.
Right, that's where things get really interesting. Krishnamurti's view of consciousness as potentially both a biological and a quantum phenomenon really spurred research into whether quantum processes might be happening in the brain itself. Schneppet even mentions the Penrose-Hameroff hypothesis as an example of this line of inquiry.
So he's prompting scientists to consider the brain in a whole new way.
Exactly. And critically, as Schneppet emphasizes, Krishnamurti always brought those ethical considerations into the conversation. He didn't see ethics as an afterthought, but as an integral part of scientific exploration.
And Schneppet highlights Krishnamurti's focus on education, his understanding of how important it was to cultivate this interdisciplinary approach in future generations.
Right. He wasn't just focused on the present, he was thinking about the future of science. Schneppet describes how Krishnamurti actively built a network connecting philosophers, physicists, neuroscientists, computer scientists, creating a space for them to exchange ideas and collaborate on research projects.
So he was really laying the groundwork for a more integrated approach to scientific inquiry.
Absolutely. And he didn't just connect people virtually. Schneppet tells us about the conferences and workshops Krishnamurti organized, bringing together diverse thinkers to grapple with the big questions raised by quantum physics.
Not just the technical stuff, but also the philosophical and ethical implications.
Exactly. Schneppet even mentions a specific conference titled Entanglement of Science and Ethics, which perfectly captures that interdisciplinary spirit. He was a true catalyst, bringing people together and fostering those crucial conversations.
Okay, so we've seen the positive side, his contributions, his influence, but Schneppet also addresses the criticisms and pushback Krishnamurti received, right?
He does. It's important to acknowledge that not everyone embraced his ideas, especially in the more traditional scientific community. Schneppet notes that there was a mixed reaction to Krishnamurti's philosophical approach in quantum research.
I imagine some people were skeptical.
Definitely. While some found his ideas inspiring, others viewed them as too speculative, particularly his notion that consciousness plays a role in shaping reality. For many physicists, that veered too far into metaphysics.
Metaphysics, that realm of philosophy that deals with the fundamental nature of reality, often seen as beyond the scope of empirical science.
Right. And Schneppet highlights this criticism, that Krishnamurti's ideas were too influenced by subjective or spiritual considerations, making them difficult to test scientifically. He even contrasts Krishnamurti with someone like Richard Feynman, who emphasized the importance of mathematical models and experimental evidence.
So there was this tension between Krishnamurti's more holistic philosophical approach and the more traditional, empirically driven approach of many scientists.
Exactly. And Schneppet points to the debates that arose about the practicality of Krishnamurti's ideas, especially that idea of integrating consciousness into algorithms. Critics argued that our understanding of consciousness was too limited to even attempt such a thing.
And I imagine some people thought his emphasis on ethics might hinder scientific progress.
Right, that came up too. But despite all the pushback, Schneppet emphasizes that Krishnamurti's ideas still had a significant long-term impact.
So even though he was controversial, his influence persisted.
Absolutely. Schneppet argues that Krishnamurti's work, even if indirectly, helped to seed new fields like quantum biology and quantum psychology, and contributed to a broader interdisciplinary approach to science.
So he was a kind of intellectual disruptor, shaking things up and opening up new avenues of inquiry.
Precisely. And Schneppet concludes this section by noting that Krishnamurti's work, even if criticized, led to the establishment of new research directions focused on exploring the nature of reality, the role of consciousness, and the ethical implications of technology. He even mentions those consciousness field theories as an example.
So his ideas, even if controversial, have had a real impact on the direction of scientific exploration.
Exactly. Okay, now let's move on to Schneppet's final reflections on Krishnamurti's lasting legacy and overall influence in this fascinating realm.
All right, so what does Schneppet see as Krishnamurti's enduring contribution to the world of quantum technology?
Well, Schneppet reiterates the importance of Krishnamurti's bridging of philosophy and science, arguing that this has had a lasting effect, inspiring new ways of thinking and shifting how scientists approach technology and its ethical implications.
So he was a catalyst for change, not just in terms of specific ideas, but also in terms of the overall approach to scientific inquiry.
Precisely. And Schneppet then details what he sees as the long-term implications of Krishnamurti's work. Technologically, he points to advancements in quantum computing, quantum cryptography, and quantum communication networks. And philosophically, he highlights the ongoing exploration of the nature of reality, consciousness, and the ethical challenges posed by these powerful technologies.
So it's not just about building faster computers or more secure communication. It's about understanding the deeper meaning and implications of these advancements.
Exactly. And Schneppet emphasizes how Krishnamurti's legacy continues to inspire future generations of researchers.
Like he planted seeds that are still growing today.
Right. Schneppet talks about how Krishnamurti's interdisciplinary approach serves as a model, encouraging researchers to connect science, philosophy, and ethics from the outset.
To see them as intertwined, not separate.
Precisely. And Schneppet even gives specific examples of current projects that are building on Krishnamurti's ideas, like those developing sophisticated quantum algorithms that try to model consciousness or creating ethical frameworks specifically for quantum technologies.
So his work is still directly influencing research today.
It is. And Schneppet highlights one of Krishnamurti's most unique contributions, the bridge he built between science and spirituality.
That's fascinating. How does Schneppet see that connection?
Well, he argues that Krishnamurti's work shows that understanding reality requires both scientific rigor and philosophical depth. He prompted scientists to consider those deeper spiritual questions alongside their technical investigations.
To go beyond the purely material and explore the existential dimension.
Exactly. And Schneppet concludes his essay by emphasizing the importance of Krishnamurti's holistic approach for fostering a more comprehensive and human-centered science.
So it's not just about technological progress for its own sake, but about considering the broader human implications.
Precisely. Schneppet envisions a science that doesn't just seek technical solutions, but also grapples with the ethical and philosophical dimensions of our existence. He sees Krishnamurti as a pioneer of this holistic approach.
Wow, what a journey. It's incredible how Schneppet, in his essay, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Philosophische Inspiration für Quantenphysik, takes us through this unexpected intersection of philosophy and quantum technology.
Truly fascinating, isn't it? We started with Krishnamurti's philosophical background, that rejection of authority, the emphasis on a free mind, the focus on consciousness and perception, and how those ideas connected with quantum physics.
And then we explored how he actually entered the world of science, his interactions with figures like David Bohm, his initial forays into scientific inquiry, his efforts to foster interdisciplinary collaboration.
And then we got into those specific contributions Schneppet highlights. His innovative approach to quantum information processing, those radical ideas about integrating consciousness into algorithms, his influence on quantum computing, cryptography, communication networks, And of course, that constant emphasis on ethical considerations.
We even delved into the criticisms he faced, those who viewed his ideas as too speculative or metaphysical. But despite that, Schneeppert makes it clear that Krishnamurti's work has had a lasting impact, inspiring new fields of research, pushing scientists to question their assumptions, and ultimately advocating for a more holistic and ethical approach to science.
His legacy continues to shape how we think about these incredibly complex and powerful technologies, encouraging us to ask those deeper questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and our place in the universe. It's a powerful reminder that science isn't just about technical progress. It's about expanding our understanding of what it means to be human in a world that's rapidly changing.
Absolutely. We encourage you, our listener, to check out Jörg Oceanmepet's essay, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Philosophische Inspiration for Quantenphysik, for a deeper dive into all of this. It's a fascinating exploration of a truly unexpected connection, and it might just spark some new thoughts about your own understanding of reality and consciousness in this age of quantum technology. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.